Good afternoon. I'm Donna Kalikow, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Public Leadership. And boy, isn't this a terrific setting to celebrate the Domestic Activist of the Year. And we're so pleased to have all of you here. Sometimes I prepare my remarks because I don't like to leave out anything. And today, I decided that it was probably better just to say a few words from where the Center for Public Leadership is coming from and in terms of leadership and social change. And I might add, I'm speaking on behalf of David Gergen, and he's not here, so I can say what I want. So, let me say a few things about what I feel in terms of the students here, Susan. Every day at the center, we recognize what our mission is. And the mission is twofold. One is to deepen the pool of men and women who go out into the world to serve the common good and to advance the frontiers of knowledge about leadership. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the deepening, and every single one of you exemplify that. We've got some graduates in here, and we have a class from all different schools that are here to honor Susan tonight. And I want to say a little bit about social change and leadership. And I'm going to do it from the perspective of the students. Mid-year, last year, Casey and I brought together some of the Gleitsman Fellows and asked them a few questions about social change and what it meant to them and what was going to be helpful to them in terms of their career path and the skills that they wanted to build at the Kennedy School. And the single most important question that I drew away from it was, how would you define yourself? And we've got an election coming up. We have a president that talked about change. In this room, we all know that change is complex. We all know that the change is going to happen across sectors, that nobody can do it alone, and that we all have to do it together, and that we have to act, that we have to make things happen. So it's not just the passion, the vision, and the creativity that you all bring in this world, but it's about assembling the team that makes that happen. And when we met with this group, we said, are you a social change agent? Are you a social entrepreneur? Are you a social activist? And what we were struck by was that everyone seemed to self-identify themselves, at least within the Gleitsman Fellows, as social activists. Well, I'm here today to say to you that whatever it is that you want to self-identify yourself, it's okay. And that we don't want to spend a lot of time defining it. But the most important thing is leadership and your social change. And today we have the great honor to respect Alan's memory for being ahead of the game, which Casey will talk about, way before we were ever in this space, and to reflect in how proud we are at the Center for Public Leadership to have this wonderful gift, to be able to be a focus in terms of the university and the Kennedy School, to try to bring in faculty to grow this program and to make sure that we maximize your experience here. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce Casey Otis-Cote, who really brings, she implements, she executes, she does everything and breathes the life into this program. And it's a pleasure to have her on my team. Thank you for help.
Hi, everyone. Welcome and good afternoon and good evening. And as Donna mentioned, my name is Casey Otis-Cote, for those of you that I don't know. And I hope to know all of you more as we go through this evening and also in the future. The event tonight, the Gleitsman Award, is made possible by a generous gift that the Kennedy School and Harvard and CPL received about 4 years ago from the estate of Alan Gleitsman, who is a former television executive who, as a hobby, picked up the rights to a lot of different TV shows and movies like Speed Racer, The Man in the Iron Mask, Laurel and Hardy, just a really kind of eclectic collection of the rights to these various holdings. In the late 80s, when a lot of movies were being colorified, I guess you would call it colorification process, like Iron Mask and the Three Musketeers, he sold off all of his holdings, made a lot of money, and retired, and started in 1989 the Gleitsman Foundation. And he decided that with his retirement, what he wanted to do was share the stories of activists and the amazing impact that individuals could have with the world. So he decided that what he would do is bestow upon these wonderful activists a sizable donation in recognition of their efforts, that they could decide whether they should use it for their own personal, to compensate themselves for the personal sacrifices that they had made, or reinvest within their organizations. He didn't tell them how they should spend it, but what he did is throw a big event, get a lot of media attention, and really try to get the word out there about what these wonderful people were doing. So he started with Nelson Mandela, no small name. But he took it from there, and he defined these people as social activists, and he discovered people in the early 90s who we've come to recognize as leaders in their field, like Mohammed Yunus and Wendy Klopp, back before anybody knew who they were, and honored them and shared their stories with the world. And so his favorite quote was from Robert F. Kennedy, and it was, "Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and in the total of all those acts will be written the history of this generation." This was his passion. This is what he did. And at some point in the mid-90s, he discovered us at Harvard. We still don't understand why, because he went to Cornell. And he decided that something about the Kennedy School would be a great place to continue his legacy. And someone at Harvard was wise enough to really nurture that relationship and help him feel welcome here. And he tested us out a few times with a few award programs, and we lived up to his expectations, and we did okay. And we have been the beneficiaries of this amazing bequest. Alan, the 5 years of his death anniversary will be in May, and so we're really just starting to realize all of the benefits of this particular gift to Harvard. It's an amazing program. We are empowered to continue this Gleitsman Citizen Activist and International Activist Award program, where we alternate each year between a wonderful domestic activist and an international activist. Each activist receives a $125,000 prize that he or she can take and reinvest within their organizations or use for their own, to support themselves and the work that they do. I just have to set my mic down for 1 second and I'll show you this beautiful, beautiful sculpture. And this sculpture, Alan had designed by Maya Lin in the early 90s, who you probably know also designed the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And he reached out to her and said, "I love what you do. Do you think you could sketch something out for me that I could buy the rights to?" And so she designed this for him. And so we give this out every year. We give a black marble sculpture to the domestic award winner and a white marble sculpture to the International Activist Award winner. And it's really a really special part of the history of the program as well. So we do all that, and if that's not enough, that's about the coolest job ever for a person to have like me. When I was applying for this job, my husband said, "You mean you get to run a program where you get to meet these wonderful people and then you get to share their stories with people?" He's like, "That has to be the greatest job ever." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun." And it is, but we do other things too at CPL as a product of this gift. And I wanted to just tell you a little bit more about that. And then we're going to shift our focus back to Susan. So, we also run a Gleitsman Leadership Fellows program. We have a lot of our fellows here tonight. And actually, one of our fellows alumni was kind enough to serve as a member of our board of judges for the Gleitsman Award this year. So Johnny Fall is here. The rest of our fellows are here as well. We're starting a real legacy here with the Gleitsman program. Thank you, Johnny. And we also host a Gleitsman Visiting Practitioner program, where we bring lots of different practitioners to campus who can inspire and equip our students and also network, and just we continually try to think of different ways that we can engage students and share individual stories with them and get them excited to go out into the world and do whatever it is that they're passionate about, whether it is starting an organization or being a COO of an organization or anything else in between. So that all comes as a product of Alan's generosity, and we're very fortunate, I think, at CPL to be able to continue his legacy here. So let me see. I've totally worked off my notes, and that's totally okay. So let's talk about Susan a little bit. So So I've told you what we do here. I don't think I mentioned, but a lot of this program that we do is also available on our CPL's YouTube channel as well. So you can always check these conversations out after the fact, or refer your friends and colleagues to them to see kind of what other work it is. And we have the entire history of the Gleitsman Award program all on our YouTube channel as well. So all the way back to the early 90s, you can see all of the old footage from the old conversations, Gloria Steinem, like a very long list of amazing honorees. So definitely check that out at some point too. But we're fortunate to be able to share Alan's legacy with you and know that he would have been very eager to participate in the event tonight and to meet Susan, especially with his connection to the LA area, and really honor her and what her commitment has been to that particular community. And her story was just an instant hit with our judges. And one of the things I was most taken aback this particular round was how many judges were so compelled by her story and just really found that it resonated with them. And so let me tell you a little bit more about her, not too much, because Gretchen's going to get up next and share a little bit more. But Susan's a founder and executive director of A New Way of Life, which you've heard a little bit about, which provides immediate and long-term services for women who are trapped in the criminal justice system and seeks to change the policies and perceptions which have resulted in mass incarceration. Susan operates 5 sober living homes in South LA and serves 50 formerly incarcerated women and 12 children annually. She's also helping to help start similar homes across the United States is kind of the next phase of her work, which I'm sure you'll hear more about tonight. You're going to hear a lot more about her from Gretchen. But before I hand her off, I just wanted to read to you a few quotes from the various letters of recommendation that we received about Susan, because they were just amazing. And there were so many of them, and the stories were just awesome. So I'm just going to read you 3 or 4 quotes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Gretchen. So the first one was, for her tireless efforts, Susan is recognized throughout the community as a leader who is persistent in her pursuit of social justice and advocacy for reconstruction of the criminal justice paradigm. Congresswoman Maxine Waters said, "My district has heroes, and I am proud to say that Susan Burton is one of them. She is a citizen activist dedicated to making our community safer, healthier, more vibrant, and more equitable. The challenges facing many of the people in my district are great, but I have hope in the future of our community because of the work that Susan Burton, her staff, and allies are doing there." Another person said, "Susan represents a fundamentally critical value in the struggle to reform the U.S. criminal justice system. The notion that people with direct personal experience with the system are the ones who can speak with the most authority and authenticity about how to make the system more fair, more just, and more humane." And finally, what makes Susan an extraordinary leader and an exemplary model to follow is not only her commitment to women's recovery and self-awareness, but also her awareness of the larger picture. She realizes that change must take place in society as well. She teaches and shows women that we all must take an active role in changing the inequities in our system. And I thought that that was a particularly compelling quote as well. I think that we'll hear a lot more of that tonight. But Susan's focus is not on just the empowerment of those individual women, but on really changing the system. And I that is a true activist as far as I'm concerned. I think it's amazing. So you'll sense a lot of common themes tonight, and there are many, many more pages of letters that I could have read to you, but you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from Susan. So, so with that, I'm going to introduce Gretchen Heidemann, who is eventually going to introduce Susan. And Gretchen is on the New Way of Life Board of Directors and was instrumental in pulling this nomination together and is a very active supporter of the organization. So welcome to Gretchen, who also flew out from the West Coast. And thanks so much for being here tonight. And thanks for sharing us a little bit more of the story about Susan's motivation and her leadership. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gretchen Heidemann. I have had the privilege of working with Susan in many different capacities. I was an employee with A New Way of Life Reentry project for approximately 2 years, starting in 2004. There were only 3 of us on staff, myself and Susan and a housing coordinator. And I was amazed by how much could be accomplished with a small number of people and limited resources. I I then went back to graduate school. I've continued to be involved with the organization as a consultant and on the board of directors. I just wanted to give a couple thank yous really quickly to the center. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Casey and Amy. Where is Amy? You've been there. You are. You've been great hosts, and this is my first time to Boston and to Harvard. It's been really, really wonderful to be here. So thank you, and Susan, thank you. I feel really lucky to be here. There's nowhere else I'd rather be at this moment than standing here present this award to you. So I'm actually going to read. I'm actually going to read from the letter that, or the actual nomination that I wrote, submitting Susan for this award. I hope you don't mind that I read a bit. I figured that if the president can read his speeches, I might read a little bit too. I get really nervous about public speaking. I'm very confident in my writing ability, not in my speaking ability. So this is what I wrote about Susan. And this was in response to a question about her impact in the community and in society. Susan's impact could be captured and would be impressive enough through an account of the sheer numbers of formerly incarcerated women, men, and children who she has touched through her reentry programs. The thousands of women she has reached out to inside California prisons. The thousands, I'm sorry, I already read that part. The women who now have a reason to hope for something better upon release. The 500 women and children who have found safety and support in her sober living homes, 70% of whom remain clean and sober. The 300 women who have been discharged from parole, 150 women who have been reunited with their children, or the more than 600 formerly incarcerated people who have records expunged, discrimination claims filed, and rap sheets corrected through our legal clinics. I could recount to you scores of success stories about those women who have turned their lives around as a result of Susan's help. Women like Tracy Freeman, who was released from prison in February 2009 and has since obtained her identification documents, discharged parole, obtained a full-time job, received an Employee of the Month award at her workplace, and is in the process of locating permanent housing. I could also cite the numerous accomplishments of A New Way of Life's advocacy work, such as the recent passage of the Fair Employment Resolution by the City of Compton, the first municipality in Southern California to enact anti-discrimination legislation related to hiring for persons with convictions. More important than the sheer numbers, the success stories, or the political accomplishments, however, is the impact that Susan has had on the public perception of formerly incarcerated people. Not only is Susan herself a role model, someone who with treatment, counseling, and civic education was able to turn her own life around, but she breaks the stereotype of formerly incarcerated people as indolent, insignificant, and irrevocably criminal by giving women like her the tools to become active and engaged citizens. Every person who enters her homes and her programs is shown how to speak for themselves, to answer for their past, and become part of the solution. Susan thus embodies the ideal of restoration, believing that we are each responsible for our own salvation. Susan creates the conditions in which formerly incarcerated women and men are able to transform their own lives and the societal conditions that led to their predicament. By the same token, she encourages those on the other side, persons who enact and enforce unjust laws and who condone them through silence, to restore themselves by examining their beliefs and overturning those laws. In her recommendation for Susan's nomination, Maxine Waters wrote, and again, I'm going to quote from Maxine Waters, she wrote, "As a policymaker, I am aware of the numerous barriers that individuals face upon their reentry from prison. Our punitive laws have made a second chance almost an impossibility for most. We restrict those who want to turn their lives around from getting financial aid for school, from living in public housing, from obtaining public benefits and income assistance, and from acquiring certain professional licenses. Fortunately, in the state of California, they are not barred from civic participation once they have completed their correctional sentence, although in many states, total disenfranchisement is the rule of law. Myself and my staff have frequently partnered with Susan and other groups and individuals like her to begin to address some of the unnecessarily restrictive laws and to bring an end to the life sentence that people face even after having served their time. I am confident that together we will eventually be able to change these oppressive and discriminatory laws, and end quote there on Maxine Waters. What policymakers and elected representatives are unable to do, however, is legislate hope. Susan knows that people do not recover from the disease of addiction by waiting for a handout from the government. They do not turn their lives around after having been imprisoned by looking for pity or charity. This is why Susan is working to empower women and to develop their leadership ability so they can speak on their own behalf and engage in the struggle for a more just and equitable society. This is why Susan has developed a legal clinic where people can get certain records expunged and incorrect information removed from their background checks so they can walk into an employment office with their head held high. This is why Susan is operating voter registration drives and informing formerly incarcerated people of their legal rights and civic responsibilities. This is why Susan gathers groups of formerly incarcerated people together so that they can devise ways to address their internalized stigma and end the discrimination they face. Hopefully you're starting to get a sense of all of the things that she does. This is why Susan networks with other sober living homes to build their capacity to better address the growing problems of addiction and hopelessness in our communities. This is why Susan was asked by California's Governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to serve on the Gender Responsive Strategies Committee of the Little Hoover Commission so that her expertise could be widely disseminated. And this is why Susan, after 13 years doing this work, still spends time every day talking individually with women in her homes so that they can remember their value and worth and do not lose hope. Susan reminds them that if she can do it, they can too. Susan was recently described by Angela Davis as a modern-day Harriet Tubman, rescuing women one by one while contributing to a larger movement for civil and human rights. I can think of no better description nor no better person to receive this distinguished award. Susan, come get your award.
Thank you. I'm really touched and I'm really moved. As Gretchen was reading some of the things that I do, I was like, darn, that's a lot. You know? Like, ooh, that's a lot. But I want to thank the Gleitsman Citizen Activist Committee for selecting me for such a distinguished award. Never. I'm a dreamer. I'm definitely a dreamer. But never in my dreams would I have thought I'd be here at Harvard, here being recognized. I mean, I read the list of past recipients and I was just blown away. Like, whoa, that's pretty good company. That's pretty good company. So, I want to thank you for the arrangements that you made, and thank you for running the whole center, and thank you for the research. Yeah. Amy, I asked her, how did you find me? How did you think of me as a person for this type of recognition? And, well, she said she did some research and it just kept coming up. I'm sort of like blown away. Leadership. I'm glad to see, grateful to see, thankful to see this program in place because it can be a very lonely place. It can be really difficult when you're when you're striving to make change and people want things to stay the same. So knowing that there is this type of leadership program going on at Harvard sort of encouraged me, instills me, inspires me that you guys are coming along behind me, keep it going. Because it can be very, very lonely. I remember in the beginning, when I set on a path to build a new way of life after what seems to be a lifetime of abuse and trauma, downright torture, that it was lonely breaking out of that into a new beginning, into leadership, into helping the community. I have some notes too, so I don't get off track here. There was the family sort of violence, but there was the institutional trauma and violence that people who are incarcerated experience. I mean, no one should be placed in cages. No one should be stripped of their dignity, their pride, their goals, their ambitions, their choice, their identity. No one should be that, and that's what happens there. That's what they do. But I want to tell you, after all of this, and I want to go back a minute. I had a son who was accidentally killed by a policeman, and I had pretty well sort of endured all of this stuff up until that point. And that sort of sent me spiraling into what was available in my community and what was convenient. There weren't many therapists around South LA, but there was liquor stores and different outlets for illegal drugs. And that's what happened. I got just spiraled into that. And after many prison sentences, during which no one ever said, you have a drug problem, maybe you need to go to a treatment facility. No one ever said. I remember talking with the attorney that was appointed to me and telling him my son was accidentally killed by a policeman, but he never said that grief must be unbearable. That's why you're, smoking crack. That could be part of the reason, but no one ever said, you have a drug problem. You need some help. They said, go to prison. And that's what I did. Not one time, but 6 times. And after that, one person, one place actually said, we can help you. And I said, okay, I was pretty bad off. I said, okay, I need help. And I went to a place and they helped me. And I got better. And I got on the path to addressing my grief, to receiving therapy, to going to 12-step meetings. And I thought, aha, this is so much more humane. Why? Why was I incarcerated 6 times? Why didn't something intervene? I could have gotten drug treatment. I could have gotten therapy, but I was locked up and it just made no sense to me. I had learned to be a fighter early on because, I was fighting my way through 5 brothers, born in the projects, so I learned to be a fighter. So I automatically went to fighting for my right to be free, for my right to have a place in the community, for my voice to be heard by those who were in place to change things. I might have been like barking at the moon, but I was barking. So I went to lawmakers and I said this, and this. I said, women who have drug convictions can't get food stamps. Why? They need to eat. They did their time. We got that bill passed in Sacramento. I went everywhere. But everyone that I would listen or wouldn't listen, if I couldn't get to the legislator, I'd talk to their aide and I'd call, and I learned to write letters, and Gretchen helped me write letters, Gretchen has always, been a light and a source and a resource for a new way of life since she got there. So I just want to tell you a few of the programs that has happened as a result of a new way of life. What happened when I left treatment? I worked towards getting a place that other women could come into, because I knew other women just like me who had been had experienced trauma, had never been able to have the support to develop and take up their place in the community, have resorted to alcoholism or drug addiction, and just needed that place to break that cycle. So I worked for about a year coming out of treatment as a caregiver, and saved money and wanted to go to school as a nurse, and they told me I couldn't do that with a criminal history. Now we have a lawyer who will go before the board with any person that wants to get any kind of license. So I got a little house and began to invite women in there, and a new way of life was born. It got rooted. We all lived in the house together. We all shared the responsibility. We all recovered, and it just sort of took off, and one thing led to another. Now there are 5 houses, and we serve 50 women a year and 10 to 15 children. We have a Mommy and Me program to help the bonding process and help the women to meet the conditions of Department of Children's Family Services. We have a wealth of referral resources, good ones. You have some resources that are resources, but you have other ones that are good. I make sure that our resources are good. We have referrals for job training. I have a few connections where I can get a woman into an actual job, and mental health, physical health, and therapy. Therapy was key. If there's anyone here who's studying to be a therapist, there was a therapist I went to every week early in recovery, and I think through that therapy, I got the permission to allow myself to understand that something had really went wrong. And I just thought it was the norm, and I didn't understand how much pain and abuse I had stuffed all the years. So if anyone here is engaging people in therapy, hey, do it. Women who have been incarcerated. And then we have the Legal Reentry Clinic, one of the largest reentry clinic in LA County. That's through a partnership with UCLA Critical Race Studies Department. And then there's All of Us or None. We host the Southern California chapter of All of Us or None to elevate and organize the voices of people who have had direct involvement in the criminal justice system. I believe that we need to be in the forefront of speaking about what needs to be done. So we are organizing ourselves across California and strengthening that voice there to move out into other parts of the country. This is not a California thing, it's a world thing, but let's with the U.S. and do it in sort of like bite-sized chunks. A lot has happened. I don't know if it was bite-sized or not. It looked like I got in the car and just started driving. So that's, mostly what we've done. We have a lot of informal services and programs that help the community, but these are the pretty much formal day-to-day really running of the programs there at A New Way of Life. I have to acknowledge that, I started A New Way of Life. I started the thought and the idea, but never could I have just been the one to pull off such a feat. I recognize that the Gleitsman is recognizing me for my efforts, and given a little money that doesn't really have any deliverables, just I can just do some stuff with it, which is really, really great, just to take care of and do what I think needs to be done. And that's what I'll do, what needs to be done to further strengthen the organization and its staff, including me. But there have been so many people along the path that have helped. And I just want to acknowledge a few of those and saying names, and letting the individual know. Gretchen, who I always know, comes and does the work and does it without, I don't have to think about, is there an ulterior something going on there? I know she comes clean and clear to help. And then the place I went to in Santa Monica, Claire Foundation, they gave me that footwork, the basic, not footwork, but the basic foundation for me to spring into my own life. Rebecca Pouch, she was a therapist I went to every week for the first 6 months of my sobriety. I've searched high and low for her, but I can't find her. But I remember her as if I'm sitting across from her right now, and I remember receiving the permission to be, to acknowledge that something had really went wrong with my life, and when I began to heal. New Way of Life Board of Directors, I have 2 directors here, Craig and your wife, Ruthie. When I told you about the day the teachers set me on the chair and suspended me from school because this was too short, it was an inch too short, and I got suspended from school for 3 weeks. I never caught up back in school for 2 weeks. Never caught up back in school after that incident. And you sort of explained and made sense to me. Well, it didn't make sense that it happened, but understood what was happening. The Brown versus Board of Education, and rules got really, really tough after that happened, and that was a part of it. The list numbers of students and universities who have seen value and depth in my work and allowed their students to partnership and become partners with A New Way of Life. Saul Sarabia, who sort of taught me, I cut teeth on organizing with him. He taught me that you can fight for it, you can organize, you can win the campaign, and then the implementation is the most important part. Deanna Cherry, who's not here, but total inspiration to me. Then I have some comrades, Dorsey Nunn, Linda Evans, and Angela Davis. She is sort of a shero in the movement for me. And I've read her books, and she reminds me that it's community that goes and sustains. It's not one. It's the entire community that moves together and nourishes each other. And then there's my sponsor, Leslie. 7 or 8 days, still dripping wet, shaking, unable to form a sentence, unable to read an entire paragraph. And Leslie would pick me up and take me to meetings, take me to conferences, and nurtured and loved me back to self. And I just need to say thank you so much, Leslie. She kind of grew me up. And she's my sponsor then, she's my sponsor now. And she came down for this award. And I just need to acknowledge and say thank you. So A New Way of Life is a bridge. It's a bridge for people without hope, a bridge to safety, a bridge to activism, a bridge to hope for the hopeless, a bridge to stability, a bridge to reunification. It's a bridge that people walk across, that they're carried across, that they just need to get across. So, and it's been operating under the radar in a little corner, South LA, Watson, Compton. But the Gleitsman and the CNN has really lifted it and put a real spotlight on the work that we're doing. I mean, this is the stamp of Harvard. You know, the Gleitsman, Harvard, Robert, what did you tell me? Robert F. Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University, Gleitsman Award. I'm like, whoa. So it's above the radar, and I see it as having the ability to inspire and incite interest across this nation to actually build. I mean, what does it take? A little house, you know, bring a couple of homes, but engage community and having an active part in welcoming people back into their homes. And so I want to thank you guys for the stamp. Thank you all.